Hello and good morning dear students and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. So before we start today's Hindu news analysis, a statutory warning for all of you that today, because there are a lot number of articles that were very important in the Hindu. In fact, today's Hindu was one of the most information loaded Hindu newspaper that I have read in the recent past. Okay, so that is why this session, it might get prolonged a bit beyond 1 hour that we usually have. Okay, also after the session ends, there will definitely be a quiz for all of you on our Telegram channel, so do not forget to head to it. The link for the Telegram channel is available in the video description. So what are the various articles that we'll be covering today? So as a monumental achievement for India, the Delhi Declaration, the new Delhi Declaration, it was adopted by the G20 leaders yesterday. So it has a lot of aspects that have been covered in this declaration, ranging from Russia-Ukraine war to climate change, women empowerment, inclusivity and many other aspects. So there were 3 pages in the newspaper today that were completely covered with the news related to G20 and Delhi Declaration. So in the first topic, we'll be covering the Delhi Declaration, the various outcomes of day 1, as well as a specific article that was printed in the detailed FAQ section, that whether G20, the current G20, India's presidentship in G20 is a success, is a successful model for global cooperation. The next article is regarding the devastating earthquake that hit Morocco yesterday. More than 1,000, in fact, according to latest news, more than 2,000 people, they have died, they have perished in this earthquake. Why was this earthquake, why did it occur, and why it was so devastating? We'll take a look. The third article is regarding the electronic waste in India. Recently, a report has been released regarding e-waste and circular economy in the e-waste segment or sector of India. So how can we include circular economy in e-waste? That we'll take a look in this article. The last detail section article is about ASEAN, Southeast Asia's source of stability. Why is ASEAN successful compared to other regional organizations, and what are the various drawbacks, what are the various challenges associated with ASEAN? That will be covered in this article. In the prelims bite section, we have 6 articles. First is, with the backdrop of the G20, there was launch of the Global Biofuels Alliance, which is a key moment for development of clean energy, for development of clean fuels for the world, for the global economy. The second article is about Odisha's Konark wheel. Now this Konark wheel, a replica of this Konark wheel, it is present at the venue where the G20 summit is taking place. We'll take a look at a few features of this wheel. Next article is regarding a joint economic corridor project where India and Saudi Arabia, they have now joined hands with European Union and USA to develop this corridor, this connectivity project. This will be again a counter to Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. Next article is regarding Rudra veena. Now a big Rudra veena exponent, Shri Ustad Ali Zaki Hader, he has passed away recently. We'll take a look at why Ustad Ali Zaki Hader was important, which gharana he belonged to, and what is Rudra veena. Next, the Education Ministry, the Union Education Ministry, it has asked all the state to bring all the data regarding education under a single platform. The last article is regarding India reports fewer people with orphan diseases. Orphan diseases are also known as rare diseases. So according to this article, compared to the number of people who actually suffer from these diseases in India, the number of people who are reported to having these diseases, that is very low. This number is very low. So let us start with the first article. The New Delhi Declaration, it has been accepted. It has been accepted by all the G20 countries. There was a doubt initially that whether or not a consensus would be achieved in the New Delhi Declaration. Why? Because of Russia. So G7 countries, they and some other allied countries, they wanted to add strict words against Russian invasion of Ukraine, but Russia had stated that if such a language was used in the declaration, then Russia would not support it and the declaration would not be adopted. So why did these countries, they step down from this excessive criticism of Russia? That is something we'll see in a while. So Delhi Declaration is the outcome document, the New Delhi Declaration, okay? So it is the outcome document for the current G20 summit that is ongoing in Indian capital of New Delhi. The Troika, that is the previous president, Indonesia, the current president, India, and the upcoming president for 2024, Brazil. These countries, along with the president of 2025, South Africa, they played a very big role in helping all the countries come to a consensus. Apart from this, the G7 leader, the current leader of G7, that is Japan, also had a very big role in bringing about this consensus. Now, the biggest difference in current declaration, the Delhi Declaration, and the previous Bali Declaration in the last G20 summit is that there is no harsh mention of Russia's stance in Ukraine. The declaration, it is simply stating that there are differing national positions of the various G20 members regarding the war of Ukraine. We are supporting Ukraine, but we are not directly criticizing Russia's position in the New Delhi Declaration. So what was the reason that G7 and the European Union, they agreed to step down from such a harsh criticism of Russia, which was previously accepted during Bali? Because they wanted the Delhi Declaration to be adopted. If Delhi Declaration would not have been adopted by G20 this time, then there were talks that G20, its effectivity would have reduced sharply, especially in the background of the BRICS summit that was recently held in South Africa. So BRICS, it is also another very rising collaboration of countries, right? BRICS has also increased its membership. So G20, these nations which are not a part of BRICS, many countries in G20, they are already a part of BRICS, but these nations are not. So they did not want G20 to be overshadowed by BRICS. Because if this declaration was not adopted, many experts said that G20 could have become a very vegetative kind of a organization. So that is why this consensus was eventually reached upon. Now, what are the various provisions of Delhi Declaration? First, regarding climate change, there has been an increased emphasis on funding for climate change that has been stated in the Delhi Declaration. So the countries, they have now stated that instead of providing billions of dollars to the developing world to adopt clean energy, there is a need to provide trillions of dollars. So billions of dollars, they are too less. We need to provide trillions of dollars. We need to increase the funding so that the developing world, it can adopt the clean energy technologies and the world can reach the net zero carbon emission goal by the year 2050. So the developed countries, they need to commit to this funding. See, earlier what happened in 2010 also, the declaration of that year, it also agreed that the countries, they will come together, especially the developed countries of G20, they'll come together and collect $100 billion between 2010 and 2020 for climate mitigation and adaptation, okay? And this money, it will eventually be distributed amongst the developing world between 2020 to 2025. Okay, so that was the agreement, but this was not fulfilled. This was not fulfilled, and now the world is at such a precarious situation that the need for funding has further increased way beyond $100 billion. Okay, so this declaration, it also recognizes the need, the very pressing need of the world to reduce the global greenhouse emissions by 43% by the year 2030. What is the base year for this 43%? The base year is 2019. For example, if the emissions in 2019 were 100 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent, this needs to be reduced by at least 43%. So we need to come down to 57 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent by the year 2030. This declaration also noted that the peak emissions, the world should reach the peak emissions by the year 2025, and after that we need to seriously work upon reducing our emissions. Also, this declaration, it encourages the adoption of renewable energy. It encourages tripling 3 times the adoption of renewable energy so that the fossil fuels, they can be phased out in our efforts to reduce our emissions. So this needs to be done by the year 2030. Also, the countries, they need to voluntarily double the rate of energy efficiency improvements by 2030. So whenever we use any source of energy, a part of it, only a part of that energy that is produced by, say, burning a fossil fuel or through solar PV by the sunlight, only a part of that energy, it gets converted into usable energy. The rest of it gets wasted. Okay, so we need to ensure that this wastage in energy, it is reduced. The countries, they commit to reducing the amount of wastage of energy by doubling the rate of energy efficiency. How there was also adoption of the Global Biofuels Alliance. We'll take a look at this in further detail during our prelims bite section. However, there is a certain drawback associated with climate commitments in Delhi Declaration. What is the drawback? There is no binding time commitments. These are both voluntary. There are no binding time commitments for renewable energy adoption for the various members, as well as for providing finance by the developing world to the developed world to the developing world for clean energy technologies, climate adaptation and climate mitigation. So that is one major drawback of Delhi Declaration. With regards to finance track, what are the various declarations made under Delhi Declaration? See, you know that G20 has 2 tracks. One is the finance track, which was the original one, which was basically adopted in 1999 when G20 it started. In 2008, when G20 its goals were furthered, eventually we adopted the Sherpa track as well. Okay, so finance track was the original track. The only mode of cooperation under G20 was for finance, right? So under finance track, what all declarations have been made? First, we need to focus on regulation of cryptocurrencies. This is the first aim. The second aim, we need to improve the capacities of the multilateral development banks. We need to make these banks more and more inclusive and bigger and better managed so that they can easily fulfill the needs of the various developing worlds for their developmental needs. These discussions related to cryptocurrency, related to capacities of multilateral development banks, they will continue in Marrakesh in the month of October, when the G20 finance ministers as well as the central bank governors, they will come together and meet once again at the backdrop of the autumn meeting of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So more details regarding this, it will be available next month during this particular meeting. The declaration, apart from this, apart from the focus on cryptocurrency and MDBs, it is also endorsing the Financial Stability Board's recommendation for regulation, supervision and oversight of the cryptocurrencies in order to reduce the risks that are associated with this currency. Now, what is Financial Stability Board? Financial Stability Board, it came into being after the 2008 financial crisis. So it came into being in the year 2009 under the London Declaration of G20. Okay. So this Financial Stability Board, it basically works and provides recommendations regarding the global financial stability. So it has given various recommendations regarding regulation of cryptocurrency as well, and the Delhi Declaration, it endorses these recommendations. With regards to women and gender equality, what are the various points in the declaration? See, the declaration, it has clearly stated and it has accepted that there is a disproportionate impact, a higher negative impact, higher adverse impact on women when it comes to climate change as well as natural disasters. So women are more vulnerable when it comes to these events. So this has been accepted by the Delhi Declaration, and that is why Delhi Declaration, it has decided to accelerate involvement of women with regards to environmental policies and discussions on climate mitigation, climate adaptation, disaster risk reduction, regarding WASH, that is water, sanitation and health. So the declaration, it aims to promote the inclusion, participation and leadership of women leaders and women representatives with regards to all these aspects. It also agreed to establish a new working group within G20 on empowerment of women to further empower women and promote gender equality at a global scale. So this working group will come into being, will start its work during the Brazilian presidency of G20. It also, this particular declaration also committed to close gender gaps, to promote full, equal and effective participation of women as an equal partner in the economy, equal partner in politics as decision makers. It aims to reduce the labor gender gap in labor. It wants to promote STEM education, science, technology, engineering and mathematics education amongst the women. It wants to promote that as well. It wants to eliminate the gender-based violence, gender-based violence and gender-based violence at workplace. It also promotes it also accepts that there is a need to promote financial inclusion for women. We need to challenge the gender stereotypes and bridge digital divide that occurs on the basis of gender. So on the basis of gender, more males, they have access to digital technologies compared to females, right? So we want to bridge this gap, and the Delhi Declaration has said that this gap, it needs to be bridged by the year 2030. Apart from that, digital space, it brings in various new types of crimes against women, right? Cyber bullying, pornography, and many other things. So G20 declaration, it has also stated that we need to work together in order to make digital space a safe space for women. Apart from that, the declaration, it also encouraged its member states to adopt certain policies in order to promote inclusion of women in the economy, especially as entrepreneurs and MSME owners. And lastly, the declaration with regards to women also committed to supporting gender responsive and age sensitive nutrition and food systems, so that the women, the vulnerable sections of the society, they also have access to good and nutritious food in order to have a healthy lifestyle. What are the other inclusions apart from these three main categories? 1. Strong condemnation of terrorist activities all across the world. So that has also been adopted. And in this regard, there is an increased commitment to support Financial Action Task Force in its function to reduce money laundering, terrorist financing, as well as financing of the organized crimes. So the G20 countries, they have committed to support FATF in these regards. There is also a focus on inclusivity, and as a biggest example of that, the African Union, it has been included as a part of G20. The name has still not been changed to G21. No official declaration yet of that. It might get declared later, but African Union has become the second regional partner of G20 after the European Union. So that is a very big news for the global community, especially for the developing world. Apart from that, there is also a focus on hearing the voices, the developing world. Not just those countries which are members of G20, but also many other developing countries which India is trying to lead, is trying to become a leader. It is called Global South, right? Global North is what? The developed world. Global South is what? The developing and the underdeveloped world. India wants to become a champion of the Global South, and a part of that, we have ensured that Delhi Declaration also focuses upon increasing the way in which we hear the voices of the developing world. Also, we have declared under this the support to the various migrant workers as well as the refugees. This support, it needs to be done within the scope, within the purview of the national legislations. We have also committed our support to promote respects for various religions all the world, various scriptures of the world, the cultural diversity, the dialogues, and we want to promote tolerance amongst the various countries within the world. So this is about inclusivity. Then regarding technology, a point has been included regarding the use of artificial intelligence. So we want to use artificial intelligence for the good of the world. You all know that artificial intelligence can have a lot of harmful impacts as well. So G20 countries, they want to harness artificial intelligence for good for all. And with regards to that, we have reaffirmed our commitment to the 2019 AI principles that were declared by the G20 countries, which support responsible stewardship of trustworthy AI. We need to use artificial intelligence in a very responsible manner so that it does not cause harm to the people, it does not cause excessive unemployment in the economies. Okay. Apart from that, with regards to Ukraine, there are 8 paragraphs amongst the 83 paragraphs that are there in the declaration, which focus upon Ukraine and the various impacts that this Ukraine war, Russia-Ukraine war has caused in the world. In the declaration, within the declaration, there is also a commitment amongst the countries that they would want to revive the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Okay. So now also, there is also a focus on food security by G20 nations. The nations have emphasized the importance of increasing access to availability and efficient use of fertilizers, which are very much responsible for what? Increasing food production, which helps in improving food security by increasing physical accessibility and affordability, economic affordability of food. So we want to increase access to availability and efficient use of fertilizers and various other agricultural inputs by strengthening the local fertilizer production amongst the G20 countries and improving soil health, so that the soil, it does not get degraded, its fertility does not reduce over time. We also have committed to support the developing world's efforts and their capacities to address the various food security challenges that they are facing right now. After the cancellation of the Black Sea Grain Initiative and also increase in the ban of rice exports by India, there has been an unprecedented increase in food prices across the world. So the G20 countries, they have come together in order to address these food security challenges that the developing world is facing. We want to work together so that these countries, the people living in these countries, they have access to safe, affordable, nutritious and healthy food. Moreover, we are committed to strengthening the agricultural market information system. What is agricultural market information system? It was adopted in the year 2011 after a G20 meet of various agricultural ministers of G20. Okay, so this focuses the agricultural market information system. It provides a common platform for the various countries to identify what are the global stocks of agricultural produces, especially rice, wheat, maize and soya bean. So it helps in assessing the food supplies. It also provides the common platform for the countries to come together and collaborate or coordinate with regards to their food policies, right? So apart from that, we have also committed to strengthen the group on the G20 group on Earth Observations Global Agricultural Monitoring. So what does this group do? This group, it accesses data from satellites, remote sensing satellites, and through that it is able to tell about the various agricultural produce across the earth. It also helps in identifying and assessing crop conditions. It helps in assessing or knowing about the crop yields that will be there in future. So accordingly, the countries, they can manage their food security issues. Now G20 and global cooperation. Is G20 a success for global cooperation? Is the current presidentship an example of India's increasing stature across the world? See, the first thing is that despite so many conflicts amongst the countries, so many problems regarding reaching a consensus, we finally were able to adopt the Delhi Declaration despite this lack of consensus. So this shows that the countries, they are committed to cooperating with each other for development under G20. So this is one achievement. Also, there was inclusion of African Union in the G20. This is the first time a member has been included in G20 since its inception in 1998. So this is again a very important thing, and especially because it was done during India's presidency, that further supports India's claim to becoming a voice of the global south, to becoming a master voice for the global south. Okay, so this is again very important. And because of this inclusion of African Union, what has happened? Earlier, the P11, the developed world, which included G7 countries, European Union, Australia, South Korea, China, and Russia. The developed world plus China, we are calling China is kind of developed, but it considers itself as developing, but it is a permanent member of UNSC, Security Council. The permanent members are known as P5. This group is known as P11, which is under G20. So earlier they were in the majority. These countries were in the majority. Now with the inclusion with African Union, there is a kind of balance now between the developed, the P11 and the other developing countries. Also, there has been a possibility of revival of Black Sea Grain Initiative. It has been included in the declaration. If that happens, if that takes place by today, then that will be again a very big achievement for India's presidency and a very good example of global cooperation through G20. However, there is a small problem, a small drawback, small disappointment, that there was absence of heads of two important P5 countries during G20. The heads of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and the head of China, Xi Jinping, they were missing, and that was the only dark aspect related to India's presidency of G20. Okay, so with that we come to an end to this particular topic. It was very heavy, so that is why it took a little bit time. Now we come to the second topic, which is regarding the recent earthquake that took place in Morocco. Now Morocco, you know, it is located where? In North Africa. Now the African plate, it is colliding or converging with what? The Eurasian plate. Okay, so this is the reason why this earthquake occurred. However, it is a very rare kind of earthquake. Usually Morocco doesn't experience these such high magnitude earthquakes. Why and why it became so devastating? We'll take a look. See, the magnitude of this earthquake was 6.8 on Richter scale. It hit Morocco, killing 2,000 plus people already. More people might have perished. The numbers, they are yet to be updated. This was followed by, the 6.8 magnitude earthquake was followed by a 4.9 magnitude aftershock 19 minutes later. Now this earthquake, it had a huge damaging impact. It damaged many historic buildings, including the part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site, that is the red walls that surround Marrakesh. Marrakesh is one of the most important cities of Morocco, and the red walls, the old city part of Marrakesh, it was surrounded by these red walls which have now been destroyed, a part of which has now been destroyed. What was the epicenter? The epicenter was a town located near Marrakesh, 70 kilometers away from Marrakesh. This town is known as Ighil, in a province known as Al Haus. So this is south of Marrakesh. You can see over here, this is the epicenter, south of Marrakesh, okay, southwest of Marrakesh. Now this particular place, it is located where? In Atlas Mountains. Now Atlas Mountains, they are a fold mountain which are created because of the convergence of the African and the Eurasian plate. They are around 2500 kilometer long, traversing through 3 countries of North Africa, that is Morocco, Algeria and Tunisia. So the reason why this earthquake occurred, as I stated, is because of the convergence of the plate. Now, why it was so devastating. One reason was that it was a shallow, relatively shallow earthquake. Now, what is the difference between shallow and deep earthquake? This is the surface of the earth, okay? So, a shallow earthquake means that the epicenter of the earthquake, the focus of the earthquake, it is near to the surface. A deep earthquake means the epicenter or the focus, sorry, not epicenter, the focus of the earthquake is deeper. That means the distance between surface and the focus, it is larger. Now what happens during the earthquakes? The seismic waves, they start moving from the focus region. They start moving from here. Now in case of deeper earthquakes, what happens? The seismic waves, they have to travel a larger distance. As they travel, they keep on disseminating some of their energy to the various layers under the earth, right? Because of that, because of this dissemination of energy, the deep earthquakes, they are not that devastating compared to the shallow earthquakes. In the shallow earthquakes, the distance traveled by the seismic waves is very short, and because of that, not much energy is dissipated in the lower layers. So it gets dissipated when these seismic waves, they come on the surface. So as surface waves, this energy, it gets dissipated, and that causes a huge amount of loss of life and property on the surface. So because the one reason why this earthquake was so bad was, one, because it was a shallow earthquake. Another reason why this is so devastating is here. So a little background. African and Eurasian plates, they are meeting, which is causing tectonic activities. But generally, the epicenter of these tectonic activities, it is here. In countries like Italy, in Greece and towards Turkey. So most of the tectonic activities, they take place in this region. This region, it is relatively devoid of any kind of major tectonic activities. Minor of these, they keep on happening, but not major ones. So historically, since 1900, this particular region of Morocco where the earthquake was experienced right now, it had never experienced an earthquake of more than 6 magnitude. Okay. In the year 1960, a place known as Agadir. You might know of this place from your history lessons. So in 1960, this place known as Agadir, it experienced an earthquake of a magnitude 5.8, which led to a huge amount of loss of life and property. However, the building codes, they were adopted in after 1960. There were no building codes before that. Why? Because this area was not experiencing a huge amount of tectonic activity. There were no building codes. The people were not aware of earthquakes. They were not aware of how to save their lives during an earthquake. So it led to a huge amount of devastation. So after 1960, there were deployment of certain building codes. But again, because this area was not experiencing tectonic activities, people thought that why to invest so much money in creating houses that are resistant to earthquakes. So there was no follow-up with regards to these building codes, and that has now resulted into a death of more than 2,000 people during this earthquake. The buildings, they were not compliant with earthquake technologies. the people, they were not aware of how to save their lives during the earthquake. So they were caught by surprise. Another reason, the third reason why it was devastating was because it took place at night time. So many people, they were sleeping and they were crushed under the rubble during the night itself. So global leaders, including many G20 members, during the G20 meeting itself, they have offered condolences and humanitarian assistance. A big surprise during this crisis was the stance of Algeria. Now Algeria, it is a neighboring country of Morocco. Algeria, it had severed all its diplomatic ties with Morocco in the year 2021 owing to a lot of disputes between the countries, especially with regards to the territorial dispute of Western Sahara location. Okay, so Algeria had severed all the ties, but now Algeria has stepped up. It has said that any country who wants to provide aid to Morocco, they can use their airspace to provide this aid. Okay, so this is about the Moroccan earthquake and why it was so devastating. The next article is regarding electronic waste in India, or e-waste in India. So recently there was a report by Indian Cellular and Electronics Association. This report was titled Pathways to Circular Economy in Indian Electronics Sector, to promote circular economy in the e-sector. What is circular economy? Circular economy means we either reuse the things or we recycle the things. So anything that has fulfilled its life, it can be broken up into its components, into raw materials. These raw materials, they can again be used to create that particular product. So there is a circular movement of products. So this is circular economy. It helps in reducing wastage. So this particular report, it talked about reuse and recycling of e-waste. Now this is not just to reduce our waste. This is not just to reduce our environmental footprint, but also because this will be economically beneficial. It is an opportunity of $7 billion. This industry, it has an opportunity to grow up to this particular size. Now, what are the various rules, how e-waste is managed in India? See, there is a huge amount of e-waste in India. Why? One, India is a software hub. For software, as a software hub, we have a huge amount of electronics that are used, and that has been creating over the years a huge amount of electronic waste. The second reason is that the phones in the recent past, they have become cheaper and cheaper. They are quite affordable. So even if you break your phone slightly, you go to the market to change the phone entirely. You do not try to, you do not try to repair it, right? So there is a problem of cheaper phones. The third problem is that there has been an increase in the usage of the phones because of the cheaper data packs. India has one of the cheapest data packs in the world. So because of the reduction in the data packs, there has been an increase in the use of cell phones. Okay, many people, they cannot go anywhere without their cell phones, not even to washrooms, right? So there has been an increase in the use of cell phones, and because of that, there is an earlier damage to the cell phones. Their lives, they have reduced. So e-waste management in India, it is largely concentrated in the informal sector. So around 90% of the e-waste collection and 70% of e-waste recycling, it is managed by the informal sector. Because it is in informal sector, there are no regulations regarding, say, worker health, no kind of documentation, about how much material was extracted out of that e-waste, no kind of documentation. Oftentimes, this material, it is sold in black markets and which can be used for certain illegal purposes. Okay, so to address this issue, in the year 2016, India introduced its e-waste management rules. These management rules were further amended in the year 2018. Then in November 2022, India completely replaced the e-waste management rules, the earlier e-waste management rules, and brought up the new rules. So what are the various provisions of the new e-waste management rules? One, similar as before, there will be extended producer responsibility. The person or the company that is producing that electronic or electrical equipment, they will have the responsibility to dispose of that material after it has completed its life. So consumers, they'll buy from them, use the item, and they can give the item back to these people, and it is their responsibility to undertake any kind of recycling or destruction of that e-waste. Second, all the producers, the manufacturers, the refurbishers, and the recyclers, they have to mandatorily register themselves with the CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board. This is a mandatory registration so that we can do proper tracking of how our e-waste, it is produced and it is recycled. So the producers, when they are undertaking extended producer responsibility, they might have certain recyclers with whom they are dealing. These producers, they cannot deal with any kind of recyclers or refurbishers who are not registered entities. The third thing was that the earlier rules, they included only 21 electrical and electronic equipment. This was increased to 106 by the latest rules. This also included the solar, photovoltaic panels and cells. Okay. Next, there will be annual e-waste recycling targets that will be fixed for all the producers based on the amount of electronics or electrical equipments they have sold in an year. Next, the fifth thing, there are certain limits that have been imposed on the manufacturers regarding the amount of hazardous materials like say lead, like mercury and other things that can be there in any kind of product that they are producing. Finally, for worker development, there are provisions to recognize, register, provide skill development, monitor and ensure workplace safety for all the workers that are involved in the recycling of e-waste. So these are the various e-waste management rules that were introduced in November 2022. So they are trying to do what? They are trying to formalize the entire e-waste management infrastructure, the entire ecosystem by ensuring registration. Now, why do we need circular economy in electronics? See, the demand of electronics has been increasing over the years. However, the raw materials that are required for these electronics and electrical materials, not just electronics, even electrical equipments, they are limited, they are exhaustible resources. So, if we are able to extract the materials from the e-waste and then use it for the production, then that will be economically beneficial for us. For example, China, it ensured 5% of their secondary raw material. What is secondary raw material? Primary raw material is something that is extracted out of the earth, extracted from natural resources. Secondary raw material is the material that is extracted from this waste material. So China ensured that 5% of their secondary raw material, it went into the manufacturing of new products. By 2030, they are willing to increase their target of the use of secondary raw material to 35% in production of new equipments, new electrical and electronic products. So how can this recycling be done? We need to establish what? Reverse supply chains. What is reverse supply chains? Usually what happens, the raw materials, they go into the factory, and the final product, it is produced. In case of reverse supply chain, the final product, it will go to the recyclers, who will dismantle it, and they will produce secondary raw materials. However, it needs to be ensured that any kind of data security is not breached during this. Any kind of equipments that are taken from the consumers, the data from them, it needs to be completely wiped off from those equipments before going for the processing. Also, we need to have an auditable database of all the extracted materials. So, if all the entities of this ecosystem, they are properly registered with the government, what will happen? The government will be able to identify how much secondary raw material was produced. So, this raw material, extracted material, these entities, they will not be able to use it for any kind of illegal purposes. Also, if we have this database, we'll be able to better manage the extraction of our primary resources as well. We also need to incentivize the high yield recycling processes. The high yield recycling processes are those which are able to extract the full potential out of e-waste. Now, primarily, only certain items from the e-waste, only certain parts of the e-waste, they can be used. But high yielding recycling centers, they are able to completely recycle this e-waste up to the last drop. So, we need to incentivize these high yielding recycling centers. However, what is the biggest impediment in that? The biggest problem is financing this. This is a very expensive affair. It requires a huge amount of investment. So for that, we need to adopt a PPP mode of financing. Already the IT Ministry, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, it has launched a scheme in April 2022 to provide up to 25% of the capital expenditure that goes on the construction and that goes under the construction of these high yielding recycling facilities. Another solution is that apart from this recycling ecosystem, another solution is that these electronics and electrical equipments, they can be made more durable. They can be made more durable by the companies. Also, we need to support the right of the consumers to repair their items. So many items, they are not repairable. If you remember earlier, the phones that we used to have, say 15 years ago, we could take out the battery of it. Were able to see properly what all is there in the phone. Now, there is hardly any phone for which you can take out your battery. So the companies, they are trying hard so that the consumers, they'll keep on buying their products quickly. So we need to put a stop to that kind of practice. We need to give back the consumers the right to repair their electronics and electrical equipments. However, there are certain challenges associated with it. One, definitely, we have a large informal sector. It might take a lot of time to register all the entities that are involved in e-waste management. Also, around 200 million devices, according to this report, around 200 million devices, they are lying idle at the consumer homes. They have not been handed for recycling. See, in many Indian households, there is a tendency that we hoard things. Once the thing has stopped working, we do not, we do not want to let go of that thing. Even in your houses, if you see, there might be many old phones, old electronics, old electrical equipments, so many wires. Everyone has a drawer full of wires in their homes, right? So we do not want to let go of our items so quickly. So that is one problem, the mentality of the people, including everyone, including me as well. The second problem is that many a times, because of concerns of personal data breach, people, they do not want to give away their electronic and electrical equipments. So we need to ensure that this particular tendency, it changes, that consumers, they start giving back their e-waste for recycling. We also need to ensure that there is no personal data breach that takes place during this entire process of recycling e-waste. Also, building recycling plants on a large scale requires a huge amount of initial capital cost. Government is ready to give 25%. We need to ensure that even the private sector, it increases its interest in this particular regard and it starts investing in e-waste management. So that was about this particular topic. Now we come to the last topic of detailed section. We still have 6 more articles to go after this in prelims bites, okay? So just stay with me. So this particular article is about Southeast Asia's source of stability. Why has ASEAN become one of the most successful, economically successful regional cooperations in the world? See, about ASEAN, a quick background about ASEAN. The seeds of ASEAN, they were sown in the year 1967 when 5 countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore and Thailand, they decided to come together against the threat of communism to support the ideals of capitalism. So they decided that they will cooperate with each other to oppose this particular idea so that their economies, they do not suffer. The current membership of this particular this organization is 10 members. Now all of these 10 members, they have a diverse kind of personality. The economy ranging from Singapore, which has one of the highest per capita income, to countries like Myanmar, which has very low, meager per capita income. Culture. Countries like Singapore, they have a very cosmopolitan culture. Countries like Vietnam, it has a very cosmopolitan culture associated with it, right? So they have a huge cosmopolitan culture, and compare that to countries like Indonesia, which has a Muslim majority population, a country like Cambodia or Myanmar, which has a Buddhist majority population. So all these diverse countries, they have now come together with each other in order to cooperate on various areas of cooperation. There are 2 core pillars that are associated with this particular collaboration. One, the countries, they have committed that they will not interfere at all in any kind of internal matters of other countries, other members. Also, there will be consensual decision making. When any decision has to be made, the consensus of all the 10 nations, they should be undertaken. So these are the core pillars of ASEAN, which has made it so successful. The group's main objective is that ASEAN, it needs to maintain a centrality. It should not go to support either one member or a group of other members. It needs to maintain its centrality. Also, group as a whole is the world's 5th largest economy with a combined annual GDP of $3.2 trillion in the year 2022. The population is 600 plus million people, so that is why it is also a huge market. It also has a very strategic location. The Strait of Malacca the South China Sea, they are all neighboring areas of the ASEAN countries. In 1976, the ASEAN countries, they signed the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia, and through that they committed that they will not interfere in the internal affairs of the other nations. By the end of 1990s, as the Cold War ended, what happened? There was peace in the region because US Vietnam ties, they also improved. Vietnam, it was majorly what? Communist country. US and these other countries, these 5 countries that came together, they were more of capitalist. But by 1990s, all these differences, they started to reduce, and eventually what happened? In 1992, the ASEAN countries, they signed the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. Now this free trade agreement, it helped in creating a single market that led to improvement in the trade relationships and investments within the members, and these members, they could work collectively in order to get foreign investments within these members as well. After the Asian crisis of the late 1990s, these countries, they further committed to increase economic cooperation. See, AFTA had already led to what? A reduction in prices of consumer products. So now these countries, they were now committed to further increase their cooperation that could benefit these countries and their citizens. In 2003, there was a resolve that was adopted by the countries to establish ASEAN Economic Community. Now this economic community, eventually it was established in 2015. What it has done? It has created a single market community where there is a free flow of goods, services, investment, of labor, and capital. So this has further led to what? A reduction in prices and tariffs in these countries. However, the full extent of the success, it will still take a few years to identify that. Also, ASEAN, it established various international forums for global cooperation. In 1994, it established ASEAN Regional Forum with 26 Asia Pacific countries and European Union. In 2005, we had East Asian Summit. ASEAN India Summit, it started in the year 2002. Then these countries, they had the ASEAN as a group, it had trade agreements with many regional partners like Australia, China, India, Japan, New Zealand and South Korea, which eventually culminated in 2019 creation of Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which includes ASEAN plus 5 other countries. So these are 6 countries. India is not a part of it. So RCEP is ASEAN plus Australia, China, Japan, New Zealand and South Korea. So why has ASEAN or ASEAN, it has been so successful? It has been so successful because of this ASEAN way. That is, heavy focus is being put in consensus building amongst the various members that are in ASEAN. So any decision is not taken unless all the 10 members, they are happy with the decision. Equal weightage is given to all the members. Just because Brunei or Singapore, they are very small, it is not like they are given less importance compared to a bigger country like say Indonesia or Myanmar. No, it's not like that. All the countries, regardless of their size, regardless of their economic potential, they are given equal importance. Also, definitely there is a policy of non-interference and mutual respect of internal affairs of these countries. So all this has led to a success of ASEAN. However, many people say that because there is this heavy focus on consensus building, oftentimes ASEAN, it is not discussing or it is not taking stand on any important global matters. So many experts, they are saying that ASEAN is ineffective and toothless. It is mostly a economic forum for economic cooperation, and cooperation in any other fields that is missing. Why? Because of this consensus issue. Now there are certain challenges associated with ASEAN. One, both China and USA, they want to have an influence in the Asia Pacific region. See, earlier times, these countries, they were very much close to USA, which was a capitalist country. They were not close to China. Eventually, with the change in the decade in 1990s, in 2000s, what happened? China's stature in the world, it increased. So now many of these countries, they are dependent upon China for their foreign earnings. They export a lot of material to China, and China also exports a lot of essential raw materials and essential equipments to these countries. So they are hugely dependent upon China, and they cannot sever their ties with China in support of USA. Also, these countries, they have clearly stated that they will not act as a proxy for any kind of regional rivalries between the countries. Also, because of these countries' huge economic dependence upon China, they are not able to respond to China. ASEAN as a group is not able to respond to China in a coordinated manner. 5 of the members of ASEAN, that is Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines and Vietnam, they have territorial disputes with China. They are not, but ASEAN is not able to address it. So again, it adds to the argument that ASEAN is only an economic collaboration and it is not able to take stance on other important matters. Also, it has been gravely criticized at a global level for not isolating Myanmar. So Myanmar in 2021, the military junta, it took hold of Myanmar, and even after that, ASEAN countries, they did not criticize Myanmar, they did not sever any ties with Myanmar, and there was a huge criticism of ASEAN because of this. So these are, see, there are a lot of economic benefits that happened because of ASEAN, but ASEAN as a group, it has not been able to express itself beyond the economic matters. Now we come to the prelims bias section. The first article is very important regarding the Global Biofuels Alliance, which has been declared by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the first session of the G20 summit. The first day, the day 1 session, not first session as such, the day 1 session of the G20 summit being held in India, which was titled One Earth. So what is this Global Biofuels Alliance? The purpose of this alliance is to improve the blending, the ethanol blending of the fossil fuels. So it urges the G20 nations to take 20% ethanol blending to a global scale. So not just the members, but also many other countries across the world, it should be promoted that these countries, they should blend their petrol, blend their fuels with ethanol in order to produce cleaner fuels. So beside India, who others are the initiating members? We have Argentina, Bangladesh, Brazil, Italy, Mauritius, South Africa, UAE. So these are the initiating members. Observing states include USA, Canada and Singapore. 3 countries which are part of G20, that is China, and oil producers, major oil producers, Saudi Arabia and Russia, they have not decided to join this global alliance. Why? Because this will be directly hitting their profit margins, right? So, amongst the countries that have joined either as initiators or observers, we have 3 countries, USA, India and Brazil. Brazil is already one of the biggest champions of use of blended petrol. In fact, even 100% blended petrol or 100% ethanol, it is being used in certain cases in Brazil itself. So India, USA and Brazil, they contribute to 85% of global production and 81% of consumption of ethanol for clean fuel purposes. According to International Energy Agency, global biofuel production, it will need to triple by the year 2030 so that we can have enough clean fuels to reduce our emission, so that we can reach our target of zero emissions, net zero emissions by the year 2050. At a domestic scale, what are the domestic targets of India with regards to use of biofuels? The government, it had stated that by the year 2030, we will achieve 20% ethanol blending. Later on, this particular target was moved up and we have to achieve 20% ethanol blending by the year 2025-26. Before this, we had a goal of achieving 10% ethanol blending at a pan-India scale, which was achieved before the original schedule of November 2022. It was achieved in June itself. So this is about the Global Biofuel Alliance. The next article is about the Konark wheel. Why it is in news? Because of G20. A replica of Konark wheel, it has been placed at the G20 summit venue, and the photographs that are PM Modi, he clicked with the various global leaders, the place where he was welcoming these global leaders, that happened in front of this Konark wheel. Now this Konark wheel, it is a part of the Konark Sun Temple, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It represents the chariot wheel of the sun god, which is drawn, this chariot is drawn by 7 horses as depicted in the Hindu mythology. Okay, so this particular wheel, this particular temple, it was built during the 13th century under the rule of Ganga dynasty. The king's name was Narsimha Deva I. So Ganga dynasty was responsible for construction of the Konark temple, which has this Konark wheel. Now this rotating motion of the wheel, what is the symbolism behind this? The symbolism is Kal Chakra. It symbolizes time, that time it keeps on moving. It also symbolizes progress and continuous change. So on a wheel as it moves, it goes forward, right? It goes forward or it changes direction. It goes from one place to another. So there is some amount of progress that is associated as a symbology with movement of wheels. It also features, this Konark wheel, it also features another important fact. It also features on our 10 rupee note. You can check it if you have it right now with you. Next article is about India, Saudi Arabia, how they have joined the European Union and USA in order to launch the PGII, in order to become a part of PGII, which was launched very recently, and the India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor. So PGII, it had already been there. India and Saudi Arabia, they have joined as members for PGII, and these 4 countries, they have come together to launch the India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor. So what is PGII? Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. It was formed in the year 2022. It is a collaborative effort of the G7 countries. Okay, so the G7 countries, they came together in 2022 to establish PGII. The PGII's purpose was to fund infrastructure development projects in the various developing nations. So as India and Saudi Arabia join it, we will get benefited, we will be able to get funds for our infrastructure development. The specific focus is regarding development of infrastructure to connect the Gulf region to Europe. So PGII in this manner will be able to support this economic corridor as well. The basic aim was to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. China is providing huge funding to various countries to develop their connectivity in order to make them a part of the Belt and Road Initiative. PGII, It acts as a counter. It provides the funding to these countries to develop these connectivity and other infrastructure projects. Next, we have India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. Now, this is a mega infrastructure project which has been designed to create a seamless transportation and trade corridor between Middle East and Europe. Now, India will also join this. So, India will also become a part of this economic corridor. It is expected to include railways, ship links. That means it will be multimodal in nature. So that efficient transport systems, they can be created both for the cargo as well as for the passengers to improve the trade, to improve the tourism, to improve the mobility of people, of goods and services in this region. The project, it includes various members like India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, European Union, France, Italy, Germany and the USA. Next, we have a topic regarding Rudra veena. Now, noted Rudra veena player, Shri Ustad Ali Zaki Hader, he passed away yesterday and he was the last exponent, the last member of the Khandarbari style of Jaipur Beankar Gharana of Drupad. He was a Drupad player, a Drupad singer, and he was a part of the Jaipur's Beankar Gharana. Okay, he was one of the biggest Rudra veena player of India. You can see the Rudra veena over here. This is Rudra veena. It is a string instrument. It has 4 strings and it is made up of teak wood, metal, pumpkins. These are pumpkins and bamboo. Okay, so these are the raw materials used in construction of the Rudra veena. It is used mainly in Hindustani classical music, especially in Drupad style of singing. It is believed to have been derived, the veena, the name of the veena as well as its construction, it is believed to have been derived from the word vana, that means a stringed instrument that is mentioned in Rig Veda and later in Atharvaveda. The biggest development of Rudra veena, it started during the 15th century. Now it is believed that Rudra veena, it was created by Lord Shiv for goddess Parvati, as a tribute to goddess Parvati. It is believed that Rudra veena also, it is quite heavy for women. So that is why earlier women, they did not play Rudra veena. Now, however, there are certain women who have started playing Rudra veena beyond this convention. Now, Rudra veena, as I stated, it has 4 strings. One of the strings is made up of steel and the 3 other strings are made up of copper. Now, Rudra veena, why this particular news is important, why the demise of this big Rudra veena player is important, because Rudra veena has now become a very rare instrument. We do not find many people who are able to make this veena or who are able to play this veena. So it is on the verge of extinction. In fact, during the 19th century, this decline in the use of Rudra veena, it started during the 19th century with introduction of easier string instruments like sitar, sarod and later even guitar. Now the next article is regarding development of a single platform for data related to educational schemes and other aspects. So under the NDEAR, that is National Digital Education Architecture, the Ministry of Education, the central ministry, it has asked the state to develop their own Vidya Samiksha Kendras. Now these Vidya Samiksha Kendras, they will have data related to various schemes of the Ministry of Education. Central funds, they are being provided to the states ranging from 2 crore to 5 crore for the development of these Vidya Samiksha Kendras. So what all data will need to be there in these Kendras, data of schemes like PM Poshan, midday meal scheme, teacher training like school dropout rates, attendance related information, textbook content from digital infrastructure for knowledge sharing, performance grading index, national achievement survey data of that. So all this data, it will be included in these VSKs. Now currently there exists a central VSK. We have a VSK at a central level. We do not have them at state level. The central VSK, it is located in the Central Institute of Education Technology, which further is located within the premises of NCERT. And it is managed by a private company known as E and Y, Ernst and Young. So currently what is happening is that data is being manually fed into the VSK by the various people, and then it is available to anyone who wants the data in a downloadable Excel format. So anyone who wants to analyze this data, who wants to conduct research on this data, can download the data from this VSK, the central VSK. However, currently because this is being performed manually, it takes a lot of time to feed this data. There are plans to completely automate this feeding of data as well. Also, with regards to state, already certain states, they have started their work on development of their own VSKs or data centers. States like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Odisha and Jharkhand, they have already begun this process. Okay. The next article is regarding orphan diseases. This is the last article. Now, orphan diseases, they are also known as what? Rare diseases. These are diseases, the prevalence rate of that, it is very low. So, only one person in a population of 10,000. So, this is the prevalence rate of these diseases. Now, because very less number of people, they get such diseases, it becomes difficult to diagnose the disease, because many a times the new doctors, they have never seen that kind of disease because it is so rare. So it is difficult to diagnose them, not just because of lack of experience or lack of availability of patients of these diseases, but also because of lack of investment in diagnostic technologies that will be used for these diseases. Also not much research is being done on these diseases regarding how to diagnose them or how to cure them. So we did not have many drugs associated with these disease. However, later on, especially in the past decade, there has been an increase in the awareness regarding these diseases, and that has translated into development of more and more drugs for these orphan diseases. For example, between the years 2009 to 2014, 50% of the approvals for the drugs that were given by the FDA, Food and Drug Administration of USA, it was done for what? These rare diseases or the orphan diseases. So these drugs, they are often called orphan drugs. Also, there is another problem associated with these diseases, is that there is a high cost of treatment associated with them because they are so rare. The treatment cost, it is quite high. So that becomes a big restrictive factor, especially for the poor households, the members of who have these diseases. So what is the problem with regards to India that this article is stating? See, there are around 7,000 rare diseases which affect 300 million people. So by that data, depending upon population of India, India should have 70 million cases. But the amount of cases that are being reported, they are very less. So many people who have these diseases, they have not gone to the hospitals. They are not trying to address this issue because of various restrictions. Maybe because of high cost of treatment, because of lack of knowledge about that disease, and so on. In regards to this, the government of India has also taken initiatives for these rare diseases. In March 2021, the government, released the National Policy for Treatment of Rare Diseases, where they will be providing finance of up to 50 lakh to the patients to assess the patients who are suffering from these diseases. So that is about these orphan diseases, and with that we come to an end to all the articles that were stated. Here is a mains practice question. First question is that Delhi Declaration has improved the stature of India as a champion of inclusive and sustainable development and as a leader of the global south. Analyze. So here you can mention what all has been included regarding climate change, regarding women, regarding how there was inclusion of African Union with regards to inclusivity, how we are supporting the rights of migrants and refugees. So everything, it has been stated. We are supporting food and agriculture. With agriculture is mainly a practice in the developing world. As a leader of Global South, inclusion of African Union, it increases the stature of developing countries within the G20. This is the first time that a member has been introduced in G20 since its inception. So that is again a very big achievement of India. So everything has already been discussed. You need to analyze. Analyze means give positives, give negatives, and finally give a conclusion. So this is a 15 marker for 250 words. The second question is, ASEAN is one of the most economically successful but at the same time a strategically toothless forum. Do you agree? Elaborate. So you have to give your own opinion and then you have to give points to support your opinion. So according to our discussion, yes, it is very economically successful. However, it is not able to take stance on issues apart from economic issues. So that is creating a problem with ASEAN as a regional grouping. So with that, we come to an end to today's session. We have stretched the time almost 30 minutes beyond our scheduled timing, but the topics were so many that we had to take the time. So thank you very much for attending this session. Do not forget to head to the Telegram channel to attempt the quiz based on this particular session. So thank you very much and have a very good day ahead.